1.2, the ETC ecosystem will affirm the proof of work POW based Nakamoto consensus and Ethereum Classic's highly secure model and sound monetary policy to ensure its original cypherpunk principles of trust minimization, so the market will keep discovering ETC's value and use cases. This is very important. The cypherpunk principles have to be preserved. It's not because of an ideology thing, but because if you think about it, like any other product in the world, you need to have a clear niche that you want to occupy. You need to identify that niche that is very valuable, and your product has to be absolutely created and adapted to fit perfectly in that niche, so your product occupies the niche and maximizes the use by the customers and the purchasing by the customers and sales and earnings and everything. But the same happens with the blockchains. If the industry is going to be layered and you're going to have a proof of work base layer, a proof of stake second layer, and then channels on top, and many kinds of informational applications in the third layer, and then in the fourth layer, wallets and all the interfaces with end users. And the base layer is meant to be more secure, totally decentralized and totally trust minimized, because if not, it would not be secure. And for that, it needs the proof of work consensus mechanism, because it's the only invention that can assure that thousands of nodes around the world can agree on the state of the network on the last block. Only proof of work provides that kind of consensus mechanism that is as secure a proof of work. And you want to guarantee sound money with a fixed monetary policy. And you want to guarantee privacy. All these, what I call cypherpunk values. The cypherpunks are the guys that since the 80s were working on how to create all these systems. And finally, a cypherpunk created Bitcoin. So all these systems, including Ethereum Classic, are cypherpunk systems, and that they have these values: trust minimization, sound money, smart contracts, and privacy. Cypherpunks were thinking and building these things since the 80s. In the 90s, it was, I would say, the time when they created all the ideas like smart contracts and digital money, and that you could create scarcity on the internet and stuff like that. But it was very difficult to build, and finally in 2008, 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto could do it. But if all this segmentation and niche stuff that I said before makes sense and is logical, then ETC, which will not be able to compete in the layer 2 or layer 3, because ETC is not scalable, but is very secure, whereas the layer 2 are more scalable but less secure. Then you have to preserve the values and the structure and the design of ETC to perfectly fit at the base layer. And to perfectly fit at the base layer, if you want to occupy that niche beside Bitcoin and be worth trillions of dollars in the future, you have to be very pure in your principles and how your product, which is ETC, the blockchain, is designed. And for it to be this global base layer, it has to be absolutely trust minimized. That means that you cannot have any gimmick, gadget, or thing that makes it less secure. It has to be as secure as humans and technology can produce. It has to be, for that, it has to be proof of work, because it's the most secure and most it provides the most assurance in terms of global consensus every 15 seconds. And it has to be absolutely sound in terms of supply, in terms of monetary policy. People cannot have the uncertainty that Vitalik or the developers or Charles Hoskinson is going to change the monetary policy of their systems in the future. ETC has to provide absolute certainty, and for that it has to have an algorithmic fixed monetary policy. There's no other way if you want to occupy that niche. If you want to And you have to forget about scalability and throughput and all, because that's not the value of ETC. The value of ETC is not that we can process millions of transactions per second. That's the value of the others. That's the value of the competitors, and they went that direction, and ETC is not going to compete there. ETC's value is that each transaction is absolutely secure. It doesn't matter if the fee is $0 or $5 or $50 or $1,000. What matters is that when you're moving $1 billion through ETC, you know for a fact that after X confirmations, that transaction is final and is never going to be reversed in the history of humanity. The same with smart contracts. When if you're going to have dApps that are for highly secure transactions, for governments to have their reserves and to do deals between governments with smart contracts and stuff like that, or large corporations or supranational organizations like the IMF or the UN is going to give a country some grant for something, but it has conditions, so they put it in a smart contract. They have to be absolutely sure that smart contract is not going to be modified by Charles Hoskinson or Vitalik or the core dev or Zuko and Zcash or any treasury managed thing. They have to know that after X confirmations, that smart contract is going to be immutable forever in the history of humanity. If not, it doesn't work. And that philosophy is cypherpunk, that philosophy is Bitcoin, and that philosophy has to be Ethereum Classic, because it is the same as Bitcoin but programmable at the base layer. So if you want to occupy that niche and be really valuable and worth trillions of dollars in the future, you need to follow these principles. And to follow these principles is not just to say them and then do whatever. No. If you're going to say, yes, ETC's trust minimized and ETC's code is law, and you say it verbally and etc., you have to act accordingly. Therefore, you cannot say, oh yes, ETC's code is law, ETC is immutable, ETC is cypherpunk and trust minimization, and then propose changes like the treasury, which are clearly centralizing, or propose changes like checkpointing, or sharding proof of work. All those things you cannot do if you're saying the other thing. It's like you have two personalities if you do this. So again, because ETC is always going to have these principles, then the community is always going to act accordingly, and any bad change is going to be rejected, and all the changes and upgrades that affirm these principles are going to be welcome.